Tailgate live, and Indiana football is loading up. We break down the transfer portal additions at wide receiver, Nick Marsh from Michigan State and Shazz Preston from Tulane, with film that shows you exactly how they fit, plus a full recruiting recap on who's coming in and what it means for the future. And you'll hear directly from Coach Curt Cignetti on expectations, culture, and the direction of this program. Film, facts, no fluff. This is Hoosier Tailgate, and starts now.
Hello again, everybody. I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith, and welcome to another edition of Hoosier Tailgate here on thehoosier.com. Pleased to have you with us this evening as we continue our series on the new portal additions to this 2020. Marsh from Michigan State, as well as Shazz Preston from Tulane, he was also once an Alabama commitment. So we'll get to those guys here in a little bit and talk about that, but trying to get some things done here with these different evenings with this group of players that they've been able to bring in to Bloomington this year and Indiana.
Tonight, it's Hoosier Tailgate live, and Indiana football is loading up. We break down the transfer portal additions at wide receiver, Nick Marsh from Michigan State and Shazz Preston from Tulane, with film that shows you exactly how they fit, plus a full recruiting recap on who's coming in and what it means for the future. And you'll hear directly from Coach Curt Cignetti on expectations, culture, and the direction of this program. Film, facts, no fluff. This is Hoosier Tailgate, and starts now.
Let's try this again. Welcome to Hoosier Tailgate live here on thehoosier.com. I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith. Do not know what happened. Just everything for whatever reason just kind of went kaput on me, and we had to do a full reboot. So I do apologize for that, but we want to thank you for being along with us here tonight. A lot to talk about tonight. We're going to continue our series about the new portal additions that Indiana has gotten over the course of the open portal time. And I think the one thing that Indiana was able to do with Nick Marsh and this Shazz Preston kid who was at Tulane, was once at Alabama. They were able to replace what they lost in Omar Cooper and what they lost in Elijah Surratt. And they add these two premier talented guys into that receiver room, along with Becker and a host of others. So I do think they've put themselves in a position where they've just reloaded their wide receiver room, especially for Josh Hoover. And I think we'll get to that here in a little bit, talk about their features and what makes them special players. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I also want to talk a little bit about wrapping up this 2026 recruiting class, as we kind of had an anticlimactic signing day the other day. Indiana was vastly completed with their recruiting, especially of the newcomers back in December. And a lot of those kids have already transitioned on to campus. And so it was kind of an anticlimactic day with really nothing to share outwardly other than a couple of things that came to light. We'll talk about that too as well here when we get to the recruiting segment here. But again, appreciate you coming along. Make sure you hit the like and share buttons as well, and follows and all those things that help us in a lot of different ways. Appreciate that as well. And if you are still wanting that championship gear, we're going to have that available again tonight as well. and that is on my link tree on my X account. You can get it there and go to the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatics Championship store to get all the championship gear that you can get. Now it's going fast, so if you're thinking about doing something, you're going to want to do it quickly to avoid getting shut out on some of that stuff. And some of it's at a pretty good price right now. So head on over there as well. We'll try to get that link up again for you in the comments. If you got a question, comment about something, by all means. We want this to be as fully a collective group effort. Not always, if you got a question about something that you hear, see, or something to that effect during this discussion, by all means, put it in the chat box. We'll talk about it and get it up on screen. But the biggest thing is with tonight is, outside of this is, and the recruiting is just what's going on over the last week. I mean, we've had some crazy things that have evolved over the last couple of weeks, especially with this Ole Miss and Clemson deal where Dabo Swinney basically brought receipts to his presser the other day about the tampering that went on with that Ole Miss had done. And we're going to find out pretty soon if the NCAA is going to address any of that. We've had some court cases that have now gone against the kids that have been filing. And one of them is the Chambliss kid at Ole Miss, the quarterback there. His appeal was denied to get another year of eligibility. And I think the NCAA is right in some of this in saying that if we're going to get to this, a line in the sand has to ultimately be drawn and stop the nonsense of this wanting additional years and stuff, only because there's money involved now. It's going to become to the point where it's going to be the NCAA is going to be unable to enforce any of their eligibility requirements if the courts do not start backing them up in some of these cases. And another thing is that they've got to get these cases out of the state courts, because that's where it's hurting them. You got state courts ruling on something that really has a national reach in terms of how it affects others. And so it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks with that. But Chambliss was denied that already. We're going to find out real quick on some of the other ones that have got that in the hopper, so to speak. But also going to listen to some of the things that Curt Cignetti had to say during his Big Ten Network interview, as well as being on the Triple Option podcast with Urban Meyer and Mark Ingram and those guys from Fox. He was on both of those the other day as well. And if you want to give a listen to that, you can find both of those easily on YouTube. If you got a chance, you want to listen to them in its entirety, I'd encourage you, because I think there's a lot of good things to say in there that Coach Signetti really talked about overall, and a lot of what has been transpiring over the last few weeks in that respect. But it's one of those things that Indiana and where they have evolved to now is something that people, I think, are still having a little trouble grasping, and still, even though they've already won the championship and things of that nature. But, the biggest thing that's transpired over this last few weeks has been basically the completion of the recruiting cycle. And, like I said earlier, Indiana did quite well in some of their things that they were able to get done in their recruiting stuff. And you can see some of this here on On3. And a lot of these guys we've really already discussed and talked about. And let me go back here and see, because that's the 25 class. Let's get the 26 class up there. There we go. In the Big Ten, Indiana finished 8th in the Big Ten, 30th overall. A significant drop from where they were a year ago, as you can see. But a lot of these guys we've really talked about in some of their what they bring to the table. But again, it's a very good class. Indiana was able to solidify these guys all back in December. And there are some questions like the Trevor Gibbs kid. I think he may miss spring ball due to situation with a foot that he had to have, I guess, operated on and have some screws put in place. So I doubt if he's going to be available for spring. But the rest of these guys, like I said, vast majority of them are already on campus, in school, working, doing the workouts, full, with a group of guys now with this class coming up. And then you can see some of the portal guys that were added. And these guys, we're going to talk about Nick Marsh tonight, but you can see some of these other guys that they added through the portal. They did quite well in that. This is also interesting too. Brock Scott, the kid from Leo up here in Fort Wayne area. I guess he had to have surgery on a torn labrum, and he will not be ready to go this spring. And it'll be fall before he really gets into the swing of things. So I'm gonna head back over here really quick. Whoops. I tell you, this sometimes they got way too many. Coach, you received the medium to practice. How many? I haven't looked over the dates of yet on their spring practices there, Ski Boy, but I try to get down to at least one. Usually the one I get to is the what they refer to as the spring game. What they do there in that respect, but try to get down to one. SIG doesn't open practices that much other than that one. And there may be a couple other ones here or there that they have availability to be open, but he pretty much keeps it pretty clocked down in that respects. Let's see. How do I feel about the tight end position next year? Right now, I guess you could say a little concern. With Brock Scott not being able to practice this spring and not being able to go until the fall, he's going to miss a great opportunity to get himself in line with that. But again, we don't know some of these young pups that have been in the program a year or two, where they're at in their development. And I think SIG feels pretty good where they're at there. But, we're not going to have that Nowakowski or Horton type of guy that we've been accustomed to that have played their years and they've been a, steady Eddie lining up at that position next year, unless they do some things where they shuffle things around. But again, it'll be interesting on that in that respect. Yeah, I got that with a lot of the receivers and stuff. I mean, a lot of the new recruits, they're 27 recruits, 28 recruits getting that. And the recruits from that standpoint, it's open to them, but outside, I don't know how many they'll have open this year per se, other than the spring game for sure. And they usually open one other one, and it's usually on a weekend is usually what it ends up being from that standpoint. We'll just have to wait and see when we get all of that in here in a few days. But let's go and listen to some of this stuff that SIG had to talk about with his Big Ten interview that he did on actual national signing date, and get to hear some of his comments when it comes to this class, as well as some of the portal guys.
Them being the guys who won the national championship. That would be the Indiana Hoosiers. The champs are here for the first time ever. Indiana gets to have a signing day coming off a national championship, and they got there because of the transfer portal. Again, their numbers weren't amazing. Top 30 class 2 years ago, top 25 class last year. Good classes, but not amazing, and yet they won the national championship. Think of what they might be able to do this year when they have a top 10 overall ranked transfer portal class. And it's time to bring in the man who is the national champion. Nice ring to it. He is Curt Cignetti. Curt, since you won that national title, in what ways did things feel different when it comes to bringing in players to your program?
Well, you got a lot of people wanting to walk through the door. You got a higher caliber recruit, that's for sure, and that's an exciting thing. Especially high school wise, that's a foundation, no doubt about it. Now you got to capitalize on it.
Your culture has been so good the last 2 years in Indiana, but to your point, you haven't had the highest of guys. You haven't had the 5-star guys. So with that new reality, how does Indiana adjust to things of trying to keep the culture that made you a national champ, but having these different types of players available?
I mean, it's a daily process. I mean, the things that are important to us aren't going to change, and that's, improving daily as much as you can. So it's still about selecting the right people, and they've got to fit our program. And, I will turn away talent if I don't think, the work habits or the commitment's there. So, that part of it hadn't changed at all.
Why will Indiana fans like quarterback Josh Hoover?
Well, I'll tell you what, he started a lot of football games. He's won a lot of football games, done a lot of touchdown passes. He's got quick release. He's very accurate. He's a competitor. He's smart. And looking forward to developing him.
You got a few edge rushers in the portal. Tell me what excites you about those guys.
Yeah, we got 3, and then we've got Daniel Ndukwe coming back, who's developing also. We got 2 from Kansas State. Chitty's kind of a bigger guy that could also move into tackle. Our field end has to play a little 4-eye once in a while. So, and you got Toby, who's more of a stud guy that's got really exceptional initial quickness and movement skills, pass rush ability. And then you got Josh Burnham from Notre Dame. Probably can play on both sides of the ball. A guy plays with a lot of effort, good football player. So we needed some guys there. We got some young guys, too, in the program that could develop. And so we're excited about that.
Well, to that point, the freshman D linemen you're bringing in this group are also really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 4 or 5 inside guys that we really liked in the recruiting process. And, of course, we returned Tyreek Tucker and Landino and brought Joe Yelly in from Tulsa, who mixed it up pretty good there. But some of those young guys will have to crack the number 4 spot, number 5 spot. So looking forward to it.
Good problem to have that much depth, huh?
Well, we'll find out how much depth we really have after we practice.
All right.
On paper, it looks pretty good, but, a lot of those guys are young.
Speaking of young guys, it was really fun to watch Charlie Becker develop this past season, especially the second half. You have some intriguing freshman tight ends you're bringing in this group.
Yeah, we do. Now, unfortunately, a couple of them won't participate fully in spring ball. Brock Schott from Miami had a labrum surgery, in his hip while he was at Miami, and he won't be cleared till after spring. And Trevor Gibbs showed up, needed a couple screws in his foot. So, I'm not quite sure how much he's going to be able to do. So that's probably the biggest question mark right now as I look at the offense is how that thing will end up looking come the end of fall camp. So, but, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Give me the most interesting person you've heard from since winning the national title.
I don't know. I got a letter from Mike Pence this morning. I was pretty thrilled about that. And, El Groh, who's a coaching old-timer, had some great jobs in his day. He wrote me a 6-page letter, wow. Which, had to have taken a lot of time and really appreciated that. So been hearing from a lot.
Yeah. Do things feel different? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the swag you're wearing isn't even the national title swag. That's from 2 years ago.
Yeah, and, I don't wear this for any particular reason other than I like the way it feels. I like the material, and it's a longer cut than the 25-26 version, which is a little thinner, not quite as long. So that's the only reason I wear it, And I got a lot of them. So, it's one less decision I got to make every day, what to wear to work.
Yeah, well, I think you've earned the right to wear whatever the heck you want. The national champion, Curt Cignetti. Congratulations on this class. Thanks for talking to us.
There's Coach Signetti and his comments to the Big Ten Network here the other day, and Ski Boy brought this up about, and I caught that as well, with the Burnham guy, a kid from Notre Dame, who played on the defensive end up there, but he made the comment that he could play either side of the ball. So they may be looking at him as a possible tight end. And, I think you got to look at it because of what they've got at defensive end. I'm not quite sure they needed another one. That's the ones that you'd never think about too much. But again, solid class. Everything about it is positive, and I do think with the portal as well, they've got some players coming in to revamp and restock what they needed or what they've lost. And again, it's going to be a different year, different season. It's never the same. And you got a better Big Ten next year. Let's just look at it from that way. You got Matt Campbell at Penn State. You got Fitzgerald at Michigan State, Kyle Whittingham at Michigan, and not to, those three guys just elevated the conference in terms of coaches with great experience and winners in their own right to add into this. And of course, Penn State's got probably one of the most favorable schedules in the Big Ten next year. And because they don't play Indiana, they don't play Ohio State or Oregon. And so they got a pretty good schedule mixed with that. The last one here I wanted to throw you on is the Triple Option podcast with Urban Meyer to listen to Coach Signetti talk about a question about this portal tampering stuff and kind of hear what he has to say.
The subject. I want to change the subject real quick. That this whole world of Dabo, Coach Sweeney, the NCAA right now is, it seems to me this is a slam dunk investigation that doesn't take 4.5 years to get. Are you experiencing this? I talked to a lot of friends still, and you say Wild Wild West. Are you personally experiencing that nonsense, the tampering with the Indiana roster?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a guy last year offered $1 million, but he'd be shocked at the school. And, it gone on this year. Guys walk in my office and talk to me. And, it's tough, man. It's hard. I mean, you got these agents calling everybody across America. How you love to play those guys. You try to do it the right way. But it's tough.
And there you go, Coach Signetti giving his 2 cents on the portal or the tampering of the players that are in your program and the headache that it goes along with it, especially when agents are involved and they're shopping kids around on top of people reaching out and talking to kids on your roster. I wish he would have named names because that was essentially what Dabo Sweeney was saying. Dabo Sweeney came out in that presser, brought receipts, talked about Ole Miss and what was going on with one of the players that they were tampering with. And Dabo Sweeney's basic thing is that coaches need to start naming names and they need to start providing the evidence about tampering going on. If you're not going to speak up about it, then don't complain about it because it's one of those things right now that's gotten way out of hand. And, coaches are at some point in time, they're going to figure out a way to get around a rule if they can find a loophole. And right now, I don't think there's anything on the books that says about tampering in that respect, especially with a kid that maybe has not signed anything at that school, even though he's already enrolled in classes there. But again, everybody's dealing with it. It's just a matter who wants to step up and make a commitment to say enough's enough. And these are the guys that are doing it and needs to knock it off in that respect. So Scott, appreciate that, my man. Love having you here each and every week. By all means, we want this to be something that you guys get something out of each and every week. But also want to say lots of tampering. That's no question. No ethics in that respect. A couple questions. I do not know who is actually still available in the portal that was a tight end. I'd have to go and search as it pertains to what tight ends may or not be available. Like I said a week ago, once you're in the portal, you're in the portal. Anybody can go out and get a kid out of the portal at any time, in that respect. So evidently they just haven't found what they're looking for there, or they just didn't like what they had there to select from. Uh, let's see. I think Sig will try to using a two player like he did with Pons. He said he should have used Pons more in that role. Oh, you mean there's possibility to use a defensive player that's a skilled athlete as an offensive player? Oh, I think that's always an option. I don't think you ever rule something out, especially if that individual gives you something. I think, it was a good wrinkle to throw in there in the Peach Bowl just to say that you could do it. But sometimes you've got the guys that you've gone to battle with for 11 straight weeks. It doesn't necessarily lend itself to getting, a guy playing on both sides of the ball. But again, you never shut the door to that, because if you're looking for a guy that can make a difference, perhaps a kid like somebody like Pons could do that, and you can, get the best out of your players on both sides of the ball. There's no question about that in that respect. So, but again, just a couple things there with recruiting. I think it's now that we're looking ahead to the 2027 27 recruiting class is going well. As you can see, there's been a great number of top quality 4 and 5 stars on campus already, including the 28 class. Rivals had a thing talking about who's already been in the doors at Indiana, and it's a much upgraded list from where they have been in the past. So again, the success that Indiana's had has brought opportunity to their doorstep to potentially get a better student athlete in their doors to give Indiana a look. And I think that's one thing that we've always talked about. Indiana's brand awareness right now is at its highest it's ever been. And it's showing that there are kids out there in the country, not just in the Midwest, I'm talking in the nation, that have an interest in taking a look at what Indiana has to offer, especially with Coach Signetti. And I think their record speaks for itself, or for 2 years and that stuff. So we'll have to see what comes of that with this 27 class as we get into the summer months, and you'll start getting some of the commitments and things of that nature. But it should be a possibility of getting a really good class of potential more 4 stars and 5 stars. And that's not to say that they're not going to still take the best available athlete, regardless of stars that they have. And that's what they've been able to do. They've been able to develop kids and coach them. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what he's done his best at, is taking kids that maybe got overlooked, bring them into a program, getting them bigger and stronger, faster, coaching the hell out of them, and getting them playing the best possible ball that they can play once they have that opportunity. So again, stars are great, especially when it's a no-brainer, and there's a lot of no-brainers out there, and Indiana probably is going to have a chance at some of those kids, and that's a great thing, as well as like we've seen some of the 4 stars that they have gotten over the last few years. Well, let's get into this portal, talk about this wide receiver aspect of things. Whoops, didn't mean for that to happen, as I lost my signal. Didn't mean to do that. Daggone it. But talk about this Indiana class that's coming in here. And so I get swatted back up here. But, we talk about the portal when it came to the wide receiver aspect and need. And we talked about losing Cooper, losing Surratt, and the need to replenish that. And they did with these 2 guys. They got a big, strong kid like a Nick Marsh, from the kid from Michigan State. I love that kid. I've, the last 2 years watched him on film. I just think he's a stud. He's a big, strong body that's got speed. And I think he provides Indiana, that physical presence on the outside that they've enjoyed with Charlie Becker and Elijah Surratt, especially that. And this Shazz Preston kid from Tulane, who was once at Alabama, he's another guy that has been a guy that can get up, put him on the inside receiver and let him go eat, because he's a guy that's 6 foot and a solid kid, but he also can fly. That kid's got a lot of speed. He had a great year at Tulane. But when you look at this aspect of things, and we talk about these guys in this group, we start talking about Nick Marsh to start with. I mean, you look at his stats from last year. He had 59 receptions, 6 touchdowns, 662 yards last year. Very productive at Michigan State that had a very horrible season. I mean, nobody would have thought Michigan State would have been the way they were last year, because they did have talent, and I think Nick Marsh is one of those guys that brings another threat on the outside, not just a vertical threat, but a horizontal threat as well, because of what he's able to do, especially when you get in that red zone area and you need those physical guys that can go up and get the contested balls and fight for the ball like Surratt did so well, and Becker did so well. He's a guy that I think gives us that Elijah Surratt upgrade in some respects. It should be a good addition to the squad in that respects. And then when you think about the Preston kid that came in from, let me see, from Tulane, he had a year where he had a great year at Tulane. And again, this was a guy that was at Alabama at one time. As you can see his statistics there, he had 43 receptions, 723 yards, and 4 touchdowns on the season there at Tulane. And he's a guy that gave a lot of teams fits over the last season. He had his best game against Ole Miss in the playoff game. He had 125 yards in that respects. But Marsh is the big physical type, 6'3" type of guy, I believe. And then Preston is that way as well, but they both have speed. And that's another thing that excites me about both of these guys. You take what Becker brings to the table and his speed ability, and you add these two guys into the mix, including some of those young pups that are going to be coming up through as well. They're going to have another big time receiving core next year, and will give a lot of teams fits because of who they've got. And then you add the backfield into the equation. And again, Indiana has the ability to, what do you want to take away? Kind of like they did this year. They were able to run the ball successfully. And when teams try to take the run away, they were able to throw the ball successfully. So again, what they've been able to do with all this was be able to go out and replace what they lost in production and added it with 2 productive pieces in that respect. We're going to step aside here real quick to listen to the Fanatic Store and other commercials here for a quick second. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more and get to the film on both of these wide receivers, all right here on Hoosier Tailgate on thehoosier.com.
Hoosier fans, take a moment and soak this in. Indiana is national champions, history made, banners raised, a season we'll talk about forever. And now it's time to wear the moment. Head to my Fanatic store and grab the official Indiana Hoosiers national championship gear. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, and championship designs built for fans who lived every snap, every 4th down, every win. This is authentic Fanatics gear, not knockoffs. Designed to last, comfortable, and ready to rep anywhere you go. Whether you're at the game, around town, or watching next season, knowing who sits on top, this is how you show it. Supplies won't last forever, and once it's gone, so don't wait. Hit the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatic store, lock in your Indiana National Champions gear, and wear it with pride, because this championship is forever.
Hoosier fans, listen up. If you're serious about the Hoosiers, thehoosier.com is where you need to be. We're talking insider reporting, film breakdowns, recruiting, and transfer portal coverage you won't get anywhere else. And when you subscribe, it's more than just one site. You also get full access to Rivals, On3, and The Athletic at no extra cost. Right now, you can jump in for just $1. Then it renews annually at the regular rate. $1. Total access. No brainer. Head to thehoosier.com and join today.
Welcome back to the Hoosier Tailgate here on thehoosier.com. We're going to get to the video here of Nick Marsh. Again, kid from Michigan State. He's been a world beater, starter as a true freshman up there in East Lansing, and he's a very impressive kid, and what he brings talent-wise to Bloomington out of Detroit River Rouge, and that's a big-time school up there. And I think he's going to be a guy that Indiana is going to have a great deal of success. And let's kind of watch some of his clips here. Here's one from against Indiana last year. And I'm sure Indiana was a little concerned with him because he lit him up 2 years ago up in East Lansing in that game. He's right here at the boundary. This is a touchdown. This is kind of get me. But see, this is where his effectiveness comes in because of his big size and strength. Right there over the middle, getting into that area where he can go in there and bang against coverage guys and such. And, you know, Elijah was that way as well in some respects. In terms of what he gave him. Here he is at this top up here working against a press corner. This time he's going to run a dig. Look at him get beyond that. He does a great job of using his hands here at the point, the line of scrimmage there. Pretty good get off, not a lot of wasted motion. He makes his step, he commits to it and runs a route. And this quarterback makes the throw with a guy in his face. Now he makes it. And then this is what I think he does pretty darn good of, getting the yards after catch. This is one thing I think he does quite well. And I really like that aspect of him when you think about it. Now he's down here at the bottom running what we call like a little out whip route. He's number one receiver down here at the bottom. He doesn't have a lot of wasted motion. I think he's pretty fluid with it. And this is what I was talking about. This is where I think he you know, you get him into that middle of the field. I think he's a world beater because he's a strong kid and he's pretty thick in that respect from that standpoint. Here's another one of him up at the top. It gets cut off here by the TV angle, but again, quick drop, misses it, and off of the races he goes down the sideline. And that's the one thing that he has the ability to do is get those big plays because he's so strong in breaking tackles that he becomes a problem. Here's another one where he does a great job on the catch, looking the ball in first, getting the ball in his outside arm. Pretty good ball security there. Makes the guy miss, and then figures out a way to get down the sideline and pick up an additional 5 or 6 yards. That's what he does pretty darn good out here. Here's another one at the top again. Like I said, not a lot of wasted motion there. Pretty good get off. And then using his size and physical strength to get down the sideline. And I think that's what excites me a lot about this kid is just those things right there that we saw on film is his ability to get down the field after he makes the catch. You know, I like the fact that, you know, here's a guy, again, remember Sig's number one thing when he goes in the portal, he wants productivity over potential. Well, this kid's had productivity for 2 years at Michigan State, and Indiana is getting a kid that is well polished. He's going to come in here and be a good measuring stick, competitiveness, all those things for the guys in that room. But I like what they did here in getting Marsh because, again, I think it replaces that Surratt type of player that Elijah was for 2 years and, you know, the big, strong physicalness of that in that respect. So, you know, I do think he's a little bit faster than Surratt was. So I think that's a definite. I know I saw one thing where they said he was a 4.38 40 guy. Again, that's some of the information that I scoured out there with that. And he graded out pretty good in his PFF statistical aspects of things as well. Let's look at the look at Preston here now, the kid from Tulane. And again, this kid, he did start at, let's try to get this centered better. There we go. He did start at Alabama and his year here, but here's some things here that we'll see about this kid. I think he can play inside, outside, doesn't matter. Here he is in a bunch set. The ball snapped there, and he's the guy that's running the over drag at the top. And this is where you can see he's got speed. He's coming from the X position up top. This is him right here on an over drag. He does a good job of finding the area. And then down the sideline he goes. He had 125 yards against Ole Miss in the playoff games. In the playoff game. Another thing I like about him, he's not afraid to go up and get the ball. Here's a great job of finding and getting the catch. I don't like the way he's handling the ball there, holding out front like that, but you can see he's got some speed. I not seeing a lot of this kid because of being at Tulane and not really noticing a lot about him. You get excited when you see him on tape because he can just run by guys like this one right here. He just runs by this guy on a post route, and then he accelerates. I mean, so again, the deep threat that these two kids provide Indiana, on top of what they've got already with Charlie Becker. Again, here's another one, kind of a sprint out pass. He's just running a regular go route. He runs behind guys, and it's 88 out the gate. And I just think he's one of those guys that you get excited about because of the speed that the kid has, and he's able to do some things. Again, you lose Coop, you lose Surratt. Those guys were overly productive for 2 years. They both were insurmountable what they gave to the offense in terms of the number of plays that those two guys made. These two guys, I think, help replace those plays that those two kids made and then add to the threat with Charlie Becker. You can imagine these three guys lining up and playing ball, and they're both, Charlie's a physical kid. He can get it done. And you had Marsh, you had Preston, and that's not to say that some of these young bucks are not going to come up and be a part of this group as well, because you got Morris, the kid from Michigan, who sat out this year because of a knee injury. We'll see where he's at in this equation. I'm just excited about this room. I mean, I would love to coach this room because you got a lot of players in there. I mean, I don't know how much coaching Shanahan has to do other than call the plays on Saturday, because you got a room like this. I mean, geez, I would love to coach a room like this. This will make you a world beater of a coach when you got these type of guys running out on the field for you. And that's the one thing that I like about both of these dudes in that respect, because of what they bring to the table and all that. They also, I think the other thing to think about too is how these guys complement each other, and that's the one thing that I thought Surratt, Coop, and all of them, they were all complements of each other. One guy could be having a day and the other guy may not get as much looks, but that didn't change the fact that if they try to take that other guy away that's making a lot of plays, that meant the other receiver is going to have that much of the possibility of getting the ball. I mean, that's why Charlie Becker's success this year and how he came along was, huge, because people weren't threatened by him. They didn't know much about him. They knew about Cooper. They knew about Surratt, and they knew they had to cover those guys. But Becker, they were, kind of, where is this dude coming from? So I just like this room. I like the mixture of older guys, younger guys, and I do think they're going to have a solid 2 deep at wide receiver. And and the other guy, I forgot that they're replacing too. You can't think about. I didn't mean to forget is EJ. I always said EJ was a guy I wish they had him for a couple more years, because he was, iffy there for a year or two. And he finally dedicated himself, and you saw how good he got this year. One more year, it'd have been interesting to see how far he would have gone. But I do think with these two cats, they bring it to that aspect of things when you talk about it. But the one thing about it too, you got to be careful of, and I always say this, even though you see the productivities of these guys, is don't get too caught up in the stat lines. I think outside of the numbers, it's the impact that these guys bring to the overall offense. And again, you line up with Becker, Preston, Nick Marsh, Morris, whoever that may be, whether it's a 3-receiver set or 4-receiver set, and you've got BB, you got Turbo, in the backfield when, Martin, man, it just makes you excited because those guys are going to make the offensive line that much better, especially the running backs. And that's the one thing that Hemby and Black did. They made the line much better because they made those old linemen right more so than they were wrong. So again, excited about what they've added here. And even with Hoover, you got to think that his productivity for 3 years at TCU was no fluke. He's going to learn a new system. There's going to be some growing pains, just like there was with Fernando in the spring. But yeah, I like where that kid's at, and they just got to coach some things out of him in terms of some of the mistakes that he made last year were, those are coachable, that you can get corrected. And again, excited about this offense in terms of what they bring back in terms of the firepower that they've got and at the offensive line. Do we have question marks? No question. Tight end's a question mark. Ultimately, is the depth going to be there, especially at the O-line? Because remember, the O-line last year, about midpoint, they had some guys out, and they had to have guys step up and play, and they were able to do that because they had some depth. Does that depth continue? And then what do they get at tight end? Let's see what if got any questions here. I did put that Fanatic store up so you can see it there. Whoops, didn't mean to blow it up that big. But again, you can, if you want some more of that stuff, by all means, appreciate it if you do. And also get over to the Hoosier.com for that $1 subscription for the first year. Let's see here. Sounds like Sig is uncertain about tight ends, so hopefully do get another. Yeah, I think he's going to be anxious to see where some of these young guys that they have been in the program for a couple of years, where they're at in their maturity and development, and then see where some guys come back in the fall. And whether or not they take a guy and move him to a tight end because they can find reps for him more so there than they can on defense. So that's another thing we'll have to wait and see in that respects. Marsh looks like a faster Surratt. Wouldn't disagree with that assumption. Satisfying to see how you get players from Michigan State. Well, I tell you, I was excited when they got Marsh because I could imagine that kid's services was pretty well sought after, and Indiana was able to get him and lock him down pretty good. Nick has the ability to catch and rack. Will have to learn to block well. That was very important. No question. The wide receiver blocking, and if you go to that triple option podcast, there's a segment in there where Urban talks about how well Indiana was coached, especially on the outside with the perimeter blocking. And you get a lot of big runs when you got outside guys going out and blocking. So Marsh, Preston, they're all going to be expected to go get themselves dirty a little bit in the blocking game. And, I don't think that's going to be a problem because there's going to be guys there pushing them. But that's one thing that Coop, Surratt, those guys did very well. And these guys are going to have to continue that, because that's what makes Indiana better, is when you got all 11 guys working in unison, no matter whether it's a run play or pass play. Teams can't cover those three. It's going to be it's the problem. It's a good problem. Let's look like this year. I thought Indiana had legit receivers in that respect. So it's going to be interesting. I think there's a possibility of seeing the 4 receiver set or a 2-back set where you have 2 running backs out there and you can use one as a lead blocker. I wouldn't put that out of the equation at all. Because you don't know what running backs in there. Nowakowski was a guy that was essentially a fullback at Wisconsin. They converted him to a tight end, I think, the year before he came to Indiana. But he was really more of a fullback. And how Indiana uses that position, they used it differently this year to a degree than they did with Horton. But essentially, Nowakowski was a fullback for for most part, that did a great job running some routes. So they may find that with another guy in that running back room that can do the same thing and is physically strong to do those things, and, find answers to maybe some problems that we're thinking they're having, especially with the tight end position, but they got other ways to address it. And that's one good thing about, I think, the staff. They do a great job of being creative and how they do things, especially with their talent, and finding ways to plug it in along the way in that respect. Turbo can catch the ball in that respect. He is a big time. And I think BB's the same way. I think Martin's the same way. It's, again, I think what this offense brings to them, again, is Indiana's reloaded with what they need to reload with and address that. And one of the things that Sig said in that podcast as well, or may have been in the Big Ten one, last year they took 16 in the portal. I think they only took 14 this year. And it's because they're not having to go in and get as many, because they've got guys coming up that have been in the program, and some of them for this will be their 3rd year. And those guys are ready to go. And when you get to that and you're not having to go in there and rely on things too much with the portal, you got to feel pretty good. And that's what he said. I think you always will have a need to go in the portal, especially if you find something that's an upgrade. They're probably going to have to do that with the quarterback position, the way it's looking, having to jump into the portal about every year to get that guy. We'll see what Tyler Cherry's status was. Nothing was brought up about him or has been brought up about his situation. Hopefully we can get some clarity on that before they go into spring ball. Spring ball does start March the 26th. Let me see. I can read it to you here. Let's see here. Yeah, it starts the 26th. And it's basically Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday is their kind of routine. And it looks like Thursday, April 23rd, I'm going to guess that's going to be their spring game, because that, I do believe, is Little 5 weekend. So they're going to try to do it in conjunction with that Little 5 like they did a year ago. But again, Indiana, I think they did a great job with the recruiting class that they got. They're doing great with some of the guys that they could get for 27 and 28, because they've been able to raise their brand. And I think kids are wanting to check out Indiana more because they won an Natty. They won the Big Ten. Kids want to go play for championships. Indiana's made it known that they're here to play for championships and get to the national playoffs. And I think that's going to be something that's going to serve them well when it comes talking to these kids and getting a chance to get some big time recruits, not just on campus, but committed. And I think Bloomington's campus sells itself, especially with parents and stuff. And I think that's one of the big things with Indiana as far as it goes. Let's see here. Brian said, yeah, he's a good year removed. And I just think there's got to be some clarification. Is he coming back? Is he planning on playing? Because he wasn't technically on the roster this year. He was more of a kind of a student assistant. But now is that status change where he's back into it with being in spring practice and such? Because, that kid, again, I watched that kid play a couple times his senior year, and I was impressed with the kid. And so I like the way that kid was put together. It's just a matter, can he overcome that injury and get back to doing things that he was, that he did before? And I don't think there's a question that he can. It's just going to have to see where he's at. And that's why, like you said there, Hoover has this one season left. Wilson is gone after this year. And you got Tyler Cherry and then some freshmen underneath him. So you got to feel like, if Tyler can be that guy, he can put himself in a position to get himself back involved in everything and ready for spring. And then, of course, to see where he falls in line with that after all. So, again, some big question marks going into spring. We'll find out here in the month of March. But we'll still be back here next week. We'll continue this series on the new portal editions, as well as bringing you any up-to-date information when it comes to Indiana football. Appreciate it again for being with me here tonight. Sorry for the first glitch part of the night when things kind of went haywire, but we got back on track and got going. And again, like I said, I really like where Indiana sits with their revamped running back room, wide receiver room, and who they got at QB. I'm really strong about that. And I do think we'll talk about the old linemen they got, and then we'll move our way to the defensive side of the ball. But again, I do like where Indiana sits right now with what they is ready to be going on. And that's correct. Bond is another one that is a guy that I think can provide a lot for this Indiana team and in a lot of different ways, but we'll wait and see. That's what spring ball's for, the competition, like Sig says, and we'll find out who's ready and who's not. And a lot of times these guys are fighting for opportunity, and that's the best motivator is when you have an opportunity to be in the top 22 or the top 11, you're going to work your fanny off to try to be that guy. So we'll see you again next Thursday night, 7:30, again here for the Hoosier Tailgate, live on thehoosier.com. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. We'll see you next Thursday. Have a good weekend, everybody.